Interesting co-main event, and you always scratch your head when they decide to pit two unranked heavyweights together, but that's exactly what we're going to get this weekend as Big Ben Rothwell takes on Big Marcos Rogerio de Lima. And I say that because, Matt, de Lima is not a heavyweight throughout his career. I mean, this is a guy that came into the UFC off of The Ultimate Fighter Brazil. It was season 3 at heavyweight. Now, he did lose to your eventual champion, Antonio Carlos Jr., your current PFL light heavyweight champion. Congrats, hats off to him. But in his next fight, well, it's at heavyweight, but he weighs 235 pounds. And then he goes down and he fights Igor Prokopchak. Now, I butchered that, but 205 pounds on the nose. And that was a career trajectory for Mr. Rogerio de Lima. And then you look at it, and there's a point where he fights Adam Vixarek. And it's 253 pounds. But before that, it was OSP, 210 pounds. And you go, okay, what happened? Well, de Lima, potential USADA violation. That's what Tapology says when he's supposed to fight Safirbek Safarov. All of this to say, that's when Marcos decided he was going to make the move. So he weighs 253 against Vixarek, 255 against Struve, 257 against Ben Sassoli, 258 against Romanov, 264.5 against Maurice Green. Matt, do you see a trend here? He's significantly weighed more in every single heavyweight fight he's had since he's come back to heavyweight recently. He's going to take on a guy in Ben Rothwell that traditionally cuts to make it to heavyweight, who was supposed to fight Felipe Lins, who was supposed to be on this card. Maybe he will. His fight against OSP is out. But my favorite thing ever is that quote that Stipe Miocic had when he was getting on a plane, getting ready to fight Francis Ngannou, and Ben Rothwell's there getting ready to go early to Vegas. And Stipe's like, hey, Ben, who are you going to fight? And Ben goes, Felipe Lins. And they both, who's this? You know, the guy that won the $1 million with PFO. Who's this guy? What? Huh? I hand it off to you this way. Marcos Rogerio de Lima is a finisher to the nth degree. He is an exciting striker. He is a guy that, like Ben Rothwell's recent opponent in Chris Barnett, can pull off some wild stuff. But at heavyweight, I kind of haven't really seen it all that much.
Pre-USADA, pre-heavyweight, just like Marcos Rogerio de Lima at 205 was like the perfect fighter. Now, he was far from it, but just humor me for a second. He had absurd knockout ability, really good Muay Thai technique, really, really fast hands for like the size of him, because he does have one of those like Fedor Emelianenko builds. He's kind of round. He's not the most lean guy in the world.
We should say about that whole USADA thing, that was the same JDS thing where there was a bad lab and it wasn't necessarily their fault. It really wasn't. So we should clear that one up before we go too much further, but there was a fair amount of a layoff for him there.
Exactly. And before that layoff, or at least leading into the OSP fight, I thought he was going to beat Ovince St. Preux. I actually thought he was going to knock him out because I thought OSP was at least somewhat over the hill, and that was back in 2017. So that tells you how weird the career of Ovince St. Preux has been. But anyways, OSP gets the Von Flue over De Lima. De Lima misses weight. And then after that, no one really knows. Like, is he going to ever be the same fighter? But you know what I hate, Craig? It's when guys used to weigh 205 pounds, and now they have to cut weight to make 265 pounds. Now, the list is very short. There's not a lot of fighters who have gone through this, but we're pretty lucky. We have a recent example that we can bring up. Jean Vellante, my favorite UFC fighter of all time. It just, again, this is a big thing in boxing. When guys start to balloon in weight later on in their career, it's normally because of something. Like, okay, this is why I kind of disagree when people say get rid of weight cutting in MMA. Hear me out. This is a bit of a side panel. What weight cutting assures is that you are in the best possible shape you can be the day before the fight. You can't mess around in camp. You can't take a day off. You can't only run 5 kilometers one day that you're supposed to run 10. It makes you be the most disciplined version of yourself possible. We can both agree on this. When you lose that side of your camp and when you lose that side of your training, when you're no longer forced to be that disciplined, because now there's no financial incentive to miss weight. You don't have to weigh in at a real amount at heavyweight. You can weigh in to whatever you want to. If De Lima, after being a light heavyweight, was a heavyweight, but he fought at like 230, if he fought at a range that you felt like, okay, if he really got himself together, if he really got it together again.
Like he did on The Ultimate Fighter?
Like he did on The Ultimate Fighter, exactly. That would suggest that, hey, he's not just letting himself go in between camps. He's still being professional. He's just not doing this significant weight cut associated with fighting at 205. But when he does start weighing in at these like 260, 265 weight cuts, like it's pretty concerning for a guy who wasn't even a tall light heavyweight. It's just whenever you have a fighter move from 170 to 185 at the end of their career, we get nervous. Like Johnny Hendricks made that difference, and it looked like it was huge. Marcos Rogerio de Lima is making that weight cut times 3.
Well, I mean, like I could throw it over and you could make it like into a backhanded compliment. You could make it nice, like that George Strait song. You know how it starts and then he goes, "Let herself go on a singles cruise to Vegas once, then to Honolulu." I honest to goodness, I'm gonna out myself. I don't like George Strait all that much. Listen,
Really?
Jackson, Mark Chestnut, even, but George Strait, I've never been a giant fan. However, the one knock on Ben Rothwell is that he doesn't fight with a ton of output sometimes. Like, really, I look at his overall body of work. Maybe it was a little bit too much too soon. His last knockout loss, Matt, was at UFC 104, Machida versus Shogun, when Cain Velasquez finished him. And what, like a year and a bit ahead of that, he got knocked out by Andrei Arlovski. Since then, he's fought Mark Hunt. Hunt didn't knock him out. He knocked out Brenton Schaus. Do you know that guy?
He knocked out the Reem, Alistair?
Brenton Schaus? Anybody? He beats Matt Mitrione. He beats Josh Barnett with that crazy submission. JDS didn't knock him out. Blagoy didn't knock him out. Arlovski didn't knock him out the second time they fought. So I go through this overall body of work. The biggest thing that I can give you as a positive from both guys, one, from Ben Rothwell. He's in it from the first second of the fight to minute 14:59. Always in that fight because he is such a tricky fighter. And yeah, he might train at a Rothwell MMA, but look at his last fight. Chris Barnett tries to land a couple of blitzes early in the first round, and then Ben takes him down and holds him down until Barnett, to his credit, gets up right at the end of the round. Awesome. Second round, Barnett's really tired. Rothwell catches him in the go-go choke and finishes him. Nobody has these front chokes that Ben Rothwell has. Look at that. I go back and I sit there. It's like, Kermit the Frog with the Lipton. Like, I sit there and I just smile on my porch and I watch Ben Rothwell submit Josh Barnett with that choke that he had. I love going back and watching that. Now, I'm talking like I'm this big Ben Rothwell guy. I'm not necessarily, because, again, he's not very flashy. He doesn't really tend to knock a lot of guys out. It's usually a war of attrition.
He's like Jim Miller, but at heavyweight. Like, he just has a style that ages well. He's like Kyle Lowry. He's like Chris Paul. He's like any guy who just really prioritizes technique and the basics over anything else. Because, no, you said it perfectly, though. Like, Ben Rothwell's not a flashy guy, but he doesn't have a single real, like, massive weakness in his game.
No, it's like watching Marco Scudero play baseball. It's like, really? And he did that again? What? Marco? Still doing it, but not anymore. But Matt, yeah, when we look at this one, I'll pop the odds up there really quick. I think finishing ability and the fun aspect is definitely on De Lima. He opened a plus 130 underdog, roughly a plus 127 right now. For Ben Rothwell, the comeback, open minus 150, roughly a minus 154 over there is the average. Over on Tapology, 933 total votes. 85% Rothwell, 54% by decision, 19% by submission, 22% by knockout. For the 15% that have De Lima, 37% by knockout, 41% by decision. I have a hard time seeing De Lima winning this fight by decision. I really do. It's got to be like a quick knockout, because if not, Ben Rothwell is to fighting like wet blankets are to anecdotes. Sometimes they're good, sometimes they're not. I've never, there's never any good wet blankets, really. But Ben Rothwell is one of those guys. He just slows down the pace. He makes it his type of fight. And I see that this being that type of fight. He's not Ben Sassoli.
No, Ben Rothwell is really interesting because he's always been a gatekeeper. It's just kind of been at a different level at different stages throughout his career. Like at one point, he was the gatekeeper to the top 5. If you beat Ben Rothwell, you yourself were then considered elite. Then it was okay. If you beat Ben Rothwell, you're a good heavyweight, but maybe not a great heavyweight. Now it's if you beat Rothwell, you might be able to get into the rankings. Like, I don't want to say like the Dustin Jacoby, he's the 16th best guy in the world, but you get the idea. Like, Rothwell is in that conversation of, hey, on his best day, can give anybody a really hard fight, and on his worst day, maybe a guy like De Lima could beat him. But this is my big thing: De Lima doesn't really fight like the same guy since he has been up at heavyweight, or at least this version of him. The Ben Sassoli one was nice, but that was just like a close your eyes and throw type of a moment, and that's really the only opportunity I see him winning this fight. If he can land a big shot, which of course he can, he's a really credentialed Muay Thai fighter, but It's hard to like when your only path to victory is I'm gonna knock out Ben Rothwell. I hope you expect a really, really hard night in the office.
Matt, both of us going with big Ben Rothwell to get the win in this fight, and you are not going to want to miss it because you want a fight that's all action on paper, Matt. On paper, Max Holloway taking on Yair Rodriguez. I'm so excited about it. Let's throw it on over there. Keep it locked in with Fight Night picks, as we always say.
Let's get into it.